Hey everybody, welcome to Bestie Book Reviews. I'm here with my bestie Mandy.
And I'm here with my bestie, Jessica.
So let's spill some book tea. Let's talk about the books that Mandy and I have read over the last week, and we'll give you guys all the details. So grab your favorite beverage and your favorite coaster, and let's sit down. I know I have a Pepsi right here. So let's sit down. It's like 3:30 here, so I'm allowed to have a Pepsi. But let's sit down and talk about all the books that we read over the last week. And yeah, it was a holiday week. So Mandy, you said you read 4 books, right?
4 books, yes.
Yeah. And that's what I did too, is 4 books, because it was Christmas and I had a son that had a birthday and we had all the family stuff. So
yes,
the reading was a little bit lower than what we normally do, but we're still going to enjoy it and have fun. So sit back, relax, and listen to us girls talk about the books we read. So do you want to start us off?
I do. So I read Ravaged, Innocence by, I think it's pronounced Measha Stone. It was number 3 in her Innocent Brides series. So this is about Luca and Avery. Avery is running from her abusive husband. He was in the military and comes back and is abusive. And he is a drunk. And so she comes up with a plan and takes off with their daughter in the middle of the night. And she goes and stays at a women's shelter. And I think it says she's there for like almost 9 months. And then she gets an apartment and has found some connections and a job and is trying to get back on her feet. I will say there's one thing that happens in this book that really bothers me is she leaves, I think her daughter is like 3 or 4, and she puts her daughter to bed and then takes a baby monitor and goes like a block away to work at a bar at night. And being a mom, that just really bothers me. No. I get it's fiction, but I just really had a hard time with that.
Mm-hmm. When those things happen in books, I go, is the author not a parent? Like, do they really think that that's acceptable?
I think part of the author's point in doing that has to do with trying to paint a picture of how she's really, really struggling to get by. And she's having to make some desperate choices to do this, but I don't know. So this is Mafia Insta-Love. Check triggers for this because there is some rougher sex in this, is what it says. I also saw somewhere where people called this book dark, and I'm going to say, for what I am used to when I read a mafia book or a dark book, this is not it. But for somebody else, it could totally be that. He really kind of falls for her, but he's into, it never talks really about like the whole BDSM thing. It's spanking. And so he talks about like how he's gonna spank her because she's not thinking highly of herself or just weird stuff like that. And she like purposely, he hires her to clean his house, and she purposely locks in on him when she knows he's in the shower. And so then there's like oh, you naughty girl, you shouldn't have done that. You did that on purpose. So it kind of gets a little, I feel almost corny in a way. Yeah. And it's a pretty quick read on the two of them. I kept waiting for more of like some mafia stuff. It started off really solid with like how she leaves her husband and everything. So I was just waiting for a little more of that kind of drama, and it fell short for me in that area. So I ended up rating it on Goodreads at a 4 because it wasn't a 3. I really wish there was a 3.5 because
I know, yeah.
I didn't feel it was a 3 because it had good qualities to it. It just fell flat for me. So that's why I gave it a 4, but my review for it is a 3.5. I feel like it's pretty tame on that mafia thing. And then I get the spanking thing. I've read other books where it's in it. And in other books, I didn't find it as corny as I did in this book. And I don't know. I'll just leave it at that. Somebody else
look
read
at,
this
like,
book and tell me what you think. What
yeah,
did you
definitely
think of it? I want to know what other people think.
Yeah, because I think spanking in a book is not BDSM. I mean,
It doesn't ever say that in it. It's just the spanking part, but it's just, it feels, it's too insta love to
yeah.
get to that point for me. And I don't feel like who's somebody who's supposed to be in the mafia, I didn't get that dominant feeling from him. But anyways, somebody else
Yeah.
read the book, comment below, tell me what you thought of it.
Right.
All right, Jessica, spill the tea.
So I read from Lukov with Love by Mariana Zapata. This one is a thickie. It's a thickie. It's I mean, it's over 500 pages. It's not bad. I read it all in one sitting. Well, one car ride, really. I mean, well, listen to the audio. Come on.
But I was like, you sat down and read 500 pages and didn't move. I would definitely have to get up to go to the bathroom.
You and I both. Okay, come on. We've had 3 kids. Come on. Yeah, definitely gotta go to the bathroom. But I read this one. I love this. Is a 5-star read for me. So this one is about Jasmine and Ivan, and it's Ivan Lukov is the last name, but they're both pairs skaters, but they both don't have a partner. So there's something that happened with Jasmine and her partner a couple of years before, so she does not have a partner, even though she's an amazing ice skater. She's never won any competitions. It makes it sound like the partner kind of pulled her down a little bit, like he wasn't up to par. And then you got Ivan and his partner, and of course they've won competitions. He's done it all, and so he and her hate each other. Jasmine and Ivan they hate each other. Now Jasmine is best friends with Ivan's little sister, and they've grown up around each other. He's made snide comments and remarks as they've gotten older, and she is just does not get along with him. She gets a summons to come to the manager's office of the ice skating rink one day, and it's Ivan and his coach, and they're like, we need a partner for Ivan for the next year. We'll help you find a new partner after that, one that's worthy of you, but we need your help. And so she agrees to it because she realizes that this is the only way that she's going to actually win these awards, that they've sunk all this money in her whole life into her ice skating career, and she's never been able to show a lot for it. And so she's 26 at this point too. So we're getting to that age where it's make it or break it time for her. And so she agrees to do this. There's a lot of snarky back and forth because they don't like each other. But as the story progresses, we just start to see it's a very slow burn. And so you start to see them fall for each other. You start to see little things that you pick up on, or that you like when you finish the book, you're like, oh, that's what that meant, or that's why she had that in there. You kind of have to go back and okay, light bulb moment. But I really, really, really enjoy this book. When I say it is slow burn, if you've ever read a Mariana Zapata, you know that it is the slowest of slowest burns. But the thing of it is because it is such a good book, and because of her writing, you fall in love with the characters and their story, and you don't even realize that you're at 80% of the book before the first kiss. I didn't even realize that. I mean, I messaged you and I was like, dude, I didn't even realize how far in I was, and we're just now getting to this point. But it was just so good. I so enjoyed it. It was definitely a top read for me. Loved it. So what do you got?
Okay, so my book was called Marks on the Moon. It is by T.D. Colbert. 5, one of my favorites. I loved it. In fact, when we did our favorites video, I wanted to talk about it, but then I was struggling with like what books I wanted because I had more than 5 favorites. So I'm like, no, I'll just talk about it in the spill the tea. But such a good book. So this is Age Gap and Taboo, which I love. I feel like this might be like a hidden gem because there was not when I looked, I didn't see like a ton of talk about this book. Have you heard of it?
What is it called again?
Marks on the Moon.
No,
Yeah.
but you told me about it, but no.
Yeah.
I know you barely told me about it, but yeah.
So this is angsty and there's some time jumps. This has to do with Tess and Cade, and the book starts off from Stevie's perspective, who is Cade's wife. And she is talking about how her husband just found out he is most likely going to die. And she knows that she's not the love of his life. And she's going to bring back the love of his life because she loves him and realizes this will make him happy. Okay, so she calls Tess and says, Cade just found out he has, I think it was melanoma, and it was like stage 3. So triggers if cancer. There is some death in here as well. So check triggers for this book. So she calls, and Tess is working at a hospital when she gets this call, and she's like, okay, I will come back. And so she shows up. Cade has no idea. And then the story goes from there. So this happens like within the first few pages of the book, goes back to their relationship. So we start off with Tess being 15 and Cade is 27. Nothing inappropriate happens. So I just want to point that out. Tess is an only child who lives with her father. Her mom died during childbirth. And there's no stepmom or anything. Her dad's a firefighter. And so she grows up at the firehouse, and all the guys there are like uncles. Well, Cade starts there when she's 15. And he kind of really takes a liking to her and in like an uncle, older brother type way, and really feels for her because she like basically runs her household. She takes care of her dad. She cooks and she takes care of everybody at the firehouse. So he's like, who like cares about this girl? Like she doesn't go out and stuff. And so I don't want to give things away because there's lots of stuff that happens in this book, but this is the development of their relationship. Again, nothing happens until she's of age, and they get together and decide that they're going to give it a go. They have a great 3 weeks, and then she finds out that she got accepted into a nursing program, and he is not going to stand in her way. And so he tells her to go, and she's like, tell me not to go. And he's like, nobody's ever looked out for her and encouraged her to take care of herself. And so he feels like he's being all noble and sends her off. And so this is kind of just how the story goes back and forth, and their journey to present day. He is dying and she's back. And so I don't want to talk anymore about it because it's impossible to say anything else without giving stuff away. It was really good. Normally I don't like books with time jumps. I did struggle a little bit with why there's times in their past when they weren't together. I struggled with that because they felt like if this is such a great love, you have to have really, really solid reasons to convince me that these people should not have fought harder for one another.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I do get where he's coming from though. Like he doesn't want to saddle her down, and he wants her to go, but people do long distance relationships all the time. So I feel like that's the only part that the book could have improved, is a little bit solid explanation for why they were not together.
And I get that it's a story. I get it. But if I found out that my husband was dying, I would not be calling his ex-girlfriends.
Well, you have to read the book to really understand Cade and Stevie's relationship too. Because that was kind of my first thought too.
Right.
So
no.
You have to read the book and then tell me what you think.
I will, for sure.
Okay.
So my next read was The Wall of Winnipeg and Me. Obviously, I was on the Mariana Zapata kick because I read the other one and I was like, okay, this is great. Let me try this other one that everybody has talked about.
I'm working on this one.
Right? Do you have it? I'm
working on this one. Colty. Is that I hope I'm saying that right. It's a German last name. Yeah. So Wall of Winnipeg is a football story. She has a lot of sports romances for some reason, but Aiden is the football player and Vanessa is his
personal assistant. And so for 2 years, she has worked for Aiden, and he is basically like, I don't want to call him a dick, but geez Louise. He's like, he just ignores her, and he expects stuff to be done when he expects it to be done. Like, he doesn't acknowledge her birthday. He doesn't, I mean, he's her employer, so should he have to? Probably not. But I mean, he's just kind of a jerk. And he just really ignores her for the better part of 2 years. And in the meantime, she's developing, like, she's gone to school. She has all these student loans because she put herself through school. And she's become
student loans.
Student loans, I know. She has become a graphic designer, and she has this client base now. And so she wants to go off and make her own business and make her own money. And that has been a goal of hers. And she finally has had enough of Aiden's BS. And she's like, I'm done. I'm out. I quit. I mean, at first she gives him notice and just says, I'm not giving you 2 weeks. I'm just telling you that you need to find someone to replace me. And he's like, talk to my agent. I mean, that was literally what it was. It's like, go talk to the agent. I can't remember the agent's name, but he's like, go talk to whatever. And so then she goes and talks to the agent, and he's like, can you please say, what if we give you more money? And she's like, no. Well, after this happens, a few days later, Aiden pulls something that's pretty dickish. And she's like, done, out, bye. And so she quits, she leaves. A month or so later, Aiden is knocking on her door. He's begging her to come back. And she's just like, no, I'm not coming back. I'm not going to do it. And so he's very persistent about getting her back. He finally comes to her and says, they call him the Wall of Winnipeg because he's from Canada. And so he's like, I have to fill out my, he either has to get his work visa, like he hasn't got the papers filled out in time. And she's like, well, you could find a connection and get it filled out, or you could, I don't know, marry somebody from the States and get your green card. And he's like, yes, let's do that. You and me do that. And she's like, come again? No. That wasn't what I was suggesting. And he's like, I will pay off all of your student loans and buy you a house if you marry me. And so she really sits and thinks about it. She looks up how much she's got left in student loans. And it's
Wait a minute.
atrocious.
Is there a real life Aiden somewhere? Student loan, a house.
Wait, are you still paying on your student loans?
Well, I guess that would be awkward. It would be my husband's student loans. So
because we paid off all of ours.
Mine are paid off. So I guess that would be weird if I was marrying somebody else.
Yeah.
All right. Keep going.
Okay. So anyhow, so she finally agrees to it. And she's very worried about getting caught. She moves in with him and his roommate. They live in this big old house. And she's always gotten along with the roommate. She loves this guy. She decides she wants to do some things for herself. So she starts to train to run a marathon. And Aiden starts to realize he never paid attention to her before. At least she thinks he didn't pay attention, but she starts to see that maybe he did a little bit. And there's not like a lot of drama that's involved in this story, but it's just this progression of this relationship between them and what happens. So they're supposed to stay married for 5 years. Like that's the plan. And then get a divorce so that he has his green card. She even makes a comment that this is not like The Proposal, like the movie with Sandra Bullock, and like, it doesn't just happen that way. And I'm like, oh yeah. So, but it's very interesting that comment is made in there. I thought that was kind of cute. Again, very slow burn, very long book, but it was worth all of it. You don't even realize how long the book is because you're just so into the story. So it was 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. So my second Mariana Zapata was a win.
All right. Okay. Apparently I am obsessed with VI Keeland books because my next read was a VI Keeland. I actually listened to this on Audible. Mm-hmm. So this is The Invitation, and it is a 4 for me. It features Stella.
I have that on my Kindle. I have it on my Kindle. I just need to read it.
Oh, do you? It's good. So it has Stella and Hudson, and Stella's roommate moves out like in the middle of the night and stiffs her on a couple months rent. And she's like, well, that's frustrating. And she gets an invitation that's actually, she opens it and it's to a wedding at this library that she's like in love with. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be like a very expensive wedding. And then she realizes she doesn't know who these people are, that it was actually sent to her roommate and her friend Fisher, who is like her gay best friend, is there. And he convinces her that they're going to go to this wedding and pretend to be Evelyn, who was her roommate. So they go to the wedding. And she is like smelling gin because apparently she's a perfumist and is creating her own perfumes and stuff and has this new business that she's trying to launch. And anyways, so she is like, tells the bartender, you gave me the wrong gin. And then it turns into this bet.
Oh, Jen is in the drink. I'm like, why is she smelling a girl named Jen?
Sorry. And it turns in that these guys are like, oh, and they do this bet on whether or not she can actually smell the difference and tell the difference of these gens based on smell. And so she does, and the guy wins because she was able to do it. And so he dances with her, and then he has to go up because he's actually the bride's brother. And so he has to go up and give a speech. And he asks what her name is, and she uses the fake name. And then he's like, where do you work? And she says, oh, I worked for Rothschild, or how do you know the bride? And then says something about working at this Rothschild investment firm and stuff. And so he quickly realizes that she's not who she says he is, because he is actually the owner of that company. And Evelyn worked for him, and he was the prick boss that Evelyn had told her roommate about. So she like realizes that he knows this. He puts her on the spot in front of the entire wedding and calls her up to congratulate the bride. So she makes up this weird story, and then her and like to the whole audience about how they met, and then her and Fisher grab some champagne bottles off a table and split. Oh, she left her phone behind. And because she is trying to start her own business, she needs her phone back. She doesn't have the funds to go buy a new phone. And so she ends up meeting up with him and tries to kind of explain the situation. And he asks for a phone number and wants to take her out. And it kind of goes from there. But she ends up being friends with the bride, who then gets her some help into like getting her business going. And so she ends up having an office at their place because their company ends up investing in her business to help her launch it. And from there, she has like an obsession with reading old diaries. And from after reading this book, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to go on eBay and see if I can find an old diary. My husband's grandma passed away, and we read part of her diary from when she met his grandpa. And let's just say the story in the diary doesn't quite match up with the wholesome story that was presented.
I have to say, my grandma, you know, sent me letters from my great grandparents after grandma passed away.
Oh yeah.
One was when they were dating, and then the other one was from when they were first married. And grandpa was working at a logging camp in Idaho. They were separated. Like, not like they were separate, but they were separated because of his work at that point in time. And there was nothing juicy. Other than, I mean, I'm blessed to have them, but like, no.
So anyways,
nothing in the letters.
She enjoys reading other people's diaries, like that she's bought off eBay and that sort of thing. And she has this diary that Evelyn had given her as a birthday present before she like split in the middle of the night. And so without giving anything else away, there's a lot of secrets going on. It was very good. And I'm always amazed at how if you read a VI Keeland, you know there's going to be some great, you know, smutty scenes in there, but there's also great plot. And I've read quite a few of her books, and I've never felt like, oh, here we go again. Like, they're very different, and I can read like several VI Keelands in a row and not feel like I'm reading the same book or the same formula over and over again. So this is definitely different. And I'll let you know if I find a diary on eBay to read.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Start a new trend there, but
yeah.
Okay, so next I read Hitting Extremes by E.M. Petrova. So this is they call it extreme ops. So basically this is the story of Cora and Penn. So Penn is a ex-ranger, Army Ranger, and he has taken a job in Alaska, and this is like in the interior of Alaska, with this extreme ops. He's going to lead his own group. It sounds like it's from what I figured, maybe I missed this when I was reading it, but like it's separate. It's like a military group, but they're not in the military anymore, but they're more like Homeland Security kind of a thing, right? They're there to protect against they're there to fight traffickers and drug dealers and those kinds of things. And so he's been assigned to Alaska. And so he goes there to meet his new team. Meanwhile, Cora, I keep thinking her name was something different, but it's Cora. She is a girl who's been raised in the bush in Alaska. Her dad and her fly planes.
Hold on.
What?
Did the author do Alaska right?
Girl, I don't read it if they don't do Alaska right. Yes, she did Alaska right, and I will get to that. But she did Alaska perfect. Awesome. But so Cora's dad is a pilot, a bush pilot, and then she goes along with him. He's taught her everything she knows. She and him are doing the last run of the year before the weather turns bad. It's already cold. It's already getting a little icky, but they have one more customer that they need to get to a certain location out in the interior. And so so they load up, they get going. She's already a little suspicious about this guy. His name doesn't seem to match the accent. He's got a Russian accent, but if you lived in Alaska, you know, we got a lot of people with a Russian background and Russian accents in Alaska. So it's not a big deal. And so they're on the plane. Well, the guy turns out to be a bad guy. And he's like this huge drug cartel person from Russia. And in order he wants them to land in a certain spot. Well, there's a storm coming and there's a blizzard and they can't land there. But this guy will not take no for an answer. He ends up hitting Cora, which ticks off her dad and her dad is retired military as well. The plane crashes and they survive, but the plane crashes and this guy takes off. So then they call in the Black Ops team, the new team. They just get there and Penn has to take his team out. And so they arrive on the scene and she has to choose, like her dad has been injured. And so they want her to go with her dad. But the boys are pulling up this map of the interior and how they're going to get around trying to get to this rally point where this guy was supposed to go, because that's where they figure that he's going to go. But she's looking at the map with them and she's like, boys, that's going to take you nowhere and you're just going to die out here in the wilderness. And they're like, no, we're professionals, lady. And she's like, no, raised in the bush, okay? I know this land. And so she has done a lot of like wildlife photography. She's done a lot of guide work where she's led other groups and stuff. So she does know the bush. She knows the area that she's talking about. She knows how to survive it. Her dad has taught her, and she knows how to survive it. And so this is their story as they're trying to hunt down this guy and what happens. This was a solid 4. I mean, the girl, she gets like an extra 1/8 of a point for getting Alaska right, because like I've said before, I lived a good chunk of my life in Alaska, and I am very picky about how Alaska is portrayed. And if you don't know, you should not be writing a book on it. But she nails it. I did see a few reviews where people were like, oh, it's, that's not how a person would be. Like just how she was a survivalist. They were kind of like poo-pooing that. And I'm going, how many Alaskan women have you met? Especially ones raised in the bush, especially ones the woman who would walk us to the bus stop had been in a severe fire growing up. So she was burned, half of her body was burned. And she was what we like to call a pistol packing mama, because she had her pistol and her rifle, and she would walk with us to the mile down the road to the bus stop, because she was going to defend us if a bear or a wolverine or whatever would come out. I mean, because it was likely to happen. So we do things a little different in Alaska. So yeah, no, that was pretty on point. I enjoyed the story. The ending was a little it went a little bit differently than what I thought it would, but I still really enjoyed the book.
My last book is Brutal Conquest by Lilith Vincent.
I love Lilith Vincent. Oh, this is the one I told you to read, right?
Yes, this is an age gap forbidden romance. It was a 4 for me. I wish it would have been a 5 because age gap forbidden romance is my thing.
I haven't read it yet though.
This follows Christian and Xenia. It's mafia. Xenia is his niece, but he was adopted at birth. So that's supposed to make his obsession with her better. He has a thing for her, but it doesn't occur until she's older. So it's not a situation of like he's like a pedophile or anything like that. He has a realization that his feelings are starting to change for her, I think when she's like 15 or 16, and he swears that he is not going to do anything about it until she's 18. But he gets banished from the family for some other reasons and goes away and like basically comes back to claim her the day after her 18th birthday.
Because why wouldn't you?
Exactly. So her dad is like the mafia. There's a word for it in Russian. I don't know how to pronounce it, but he's like the mafia boss for they're a very powerful family.
He's the pecan.
Is that it?
Pecan or pecan. Yeah, I think it's pecan. I've looked it up. Like I've gone to YouTube and listened to it over and over again to get it right, but I can't pronounce it. I don't speak Russian, so I can't pronounce it properly, but I believe it's pecan.
So her dad is ill. He has cancer. It's come back for the second time and it's not looking good. And so she's just turned 18, but she is taking over the family business and has been doing this for several years. There's definitely triggers in this book, so check your triggers. There's a lot of stuff that happens to side characters. There's a lot happening in this book. So definitely check triggers. What I really like in a good forbidden romance age gap is the angst and like the forbidden, like we can't be together. They have some conversations about it, but it's kind of like swept under the rug because he is literally like obsessed with her. And she's not quite as obsessed as he is. Like he is like, I'm getting her type situation. But there's really not any of the drama or the angst that comes with the age gap forbidden romance. Like I said, they briefly talk about it amongst themselves, and that's about it. Lots of stuff is happening in this book. It's very action-packed. So if you like the mafia part, I think you'd really enjoy this book because there's tons of different things happening in it. If you're strictly reading it for the age gap forbidden romance, it fell a little bit short in that area for me just because it's not really made into a big deal. Like this is her uncle that all these other families know is her uncle. So that should have been like a big thing there and it wasn't as much. So yeah, I highly recommend it. It was a good read, but if you're strictly reading for the age gap forbidden romance, it fell just a little bit short in that, but it's still a solid 4.
Okay, so for my last book that I read, it was called Married to a Pirate by Athena Rose. So this story, this was a TikTok thing. Like I found this one on TikTok, and once again, I mean, it was okay. I gave it a 3-star. TikTok kind of let me down. You really got to learn with those Facebook recommendations and those TikTok videos. They just suck you in, and it's never as great as you think it's going to be. But this is about Georgette and Captain Stone. So Georgette is engaged to the prince. So this is in the 1700s. So she's engaged to the prince. And so she's supposed to be marrying him. So the night of the ball, their engagement ball, it is attacked by pirates. So we find out that her dad is in debt and he owes this Captain Stone a lot of money. And so all he has left is her dowry. And so Captain Stone's like, well, just give me your daughter. And the dad doesn't want to, but he does. Because every good story starts with an abduction. I mean, let's be honest. So he makes Captain Stone promise to marry his daughter, to make an honest woman of her, and then to always protect her. And so he does promise that. And so he interrupts this ball and he takes her away to his ship where she's like, we need a minister, you know, like, you can't marry me. There's no pastor here. There's no minister. And he's like, I'm the captain of a ship. Guess what I'm ordained to do? And so he literally marries them. Like, he does it. So it was just, that was interesting. And then, you know, the prince chases after her. And so there were, I enjoyed the story quite a bit, but there were a lot of elements that were predictable. And so there were like 3 or 4 big things that should have been like these big reveals in the story. But the minute it was mentioned and then like a little side note to kind of give you that little hint, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to happen. Or, oh, yep, that's what, yep, got it. So the fact that it was predictable, it wasn't that the story wasn't good. It was just way too predictable for me. And it could have been more in depth. They did have, the other thing too was the spice was probably like a 0.25 because they would have like these moments where they're making out and then it would get interrupted. And then they would have, and they're married, right? So like they would have these moments of, you think you're going to get it and nope, you don't get it. And then when it finally happens, it's just described in like 1 paragraph on page that, oh yeah, they had a passionate night together. And I'm like, really? You build this as a spicy historical. There was nothing spicy about that. Like, talk about just lady blue balls, okay? Lady blue balls. So I'm sorry. I was like, and you, I mean, I don't need raunchy, but I was like, you let me down. You totally let me down. So that's why I just gave it that 3. But I mean, the story was good. And I might read the second one. I'm not sure. The second one is about the prince. I don't know. It just wasn't there. It just didn't satisfy. So, it was all right. It was okay. So
yes. So comment below. Tell us what you're reading. Make sure you like and subscribe. And thanks for watching.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.